Okay, sweetie. Here we go. Hold on, wait a minute.
Now connected to iPhone.
Alright. See that, sweetheart? Hang on before we go to Kino.
Some stories aren't told because they're too unbelievable. Others, because they're too dangerous. This isn't one of those viral horror tales with jump scares and fake blood. Remember, what you're about to hear is something much darker. Something that actually happened. It's about control, obedience, and what goes on behind the walls of a mansion you've probably seen on TV. You've heard the whispers, the strange interviews, the breakdowns, the stars who suddenly vanish, only to come back, quieter, hollow. People laugh at the rumors, but they never ask why the rumors never stop. I didn't believe any of it either, until I saw it. I was a butler, nothing more. Kept my head down, kept my mouth shut. Until the day they cleared the entire house because Justin's coming over. That was when I knew something was wrong. And instead of leaving, I did something worse. I stayed. I watched. Now it's your turn to carry it. Because I can't hold this alone anymore.
Yeah, sure can.
I wasn't trying to work in the music industry. I wasn't chasing clout or trying to meet celebrities. I just needed a paycheck that came on time and didn't bounce. Before all this, I was a bartender hotel in Midtown. Decent tips, long hours, and guests who treated you like wallpaper. I'd been there 5 years, invisible. Then one day, this guy walks in, mid-40s, tailored coat, weirdly quiet, and watches me for a while as I'm helping a guest.
Damn,
When I finish, he walks over and slides a business card across the desk like it's a poker chip. "I've got someone looking for someone like you," he said. I flipped the card over. No name,
I'm still young.
just a number and a phrase printed in all caps. Discretion earns longevity. A week later, I was on a flight to LA to interview for a private service role. That's all they called it, private service. I didn't even know who the client was until I walked through the gate. Mansion didn't even have an address, just a long gravel driveway tucked between hedges taller than a bus. Inside, everything was spotless, quiet, like a museum made for ghosts. Then I saw him, Sean Combs, Diddy, Brother Love, whatever name he was using that month. He didn't shake my hand, just gave me a once-over and nodded. "Yeah, he'll do." That was it. I didn't even sign a contract with him directly. Everything was handled through an agency. Non-disclosure forms, a direct deposit account in the Caymans, and a flat rule book. No phones upstairs, no locked doors unless they're his, no talking unless spoken to. I told myself I didn't care. The money was stupid. I was getting $8,000 a month plus housing in the guest suite, meals, black car access, and bonuses every holiday. They told me I was there to keep the engine running, do the cleaning, manage deliveries, prep spaces before events, and just be around. That's the part that stuck with me. The guy who hired me, the one from the hotel, he pulled me aside before I take a deep breath.
Hear about Oprah?
Close your eyes if you can, and imagine a wall of warm, glowing light
Say
around
Oprah.
you. It's your only defense against what you're about to hear. It was just another long haul. The kind that keeps food on my table and gas in my tank. But this time,
Move your ass.
something felt
You're about to
different.
die.
The air seemed heavier. The shadows a little darker.
Blessings come from
I
above.
should have known to turn it down when I heard the client's name. Oprah. I know that sounds strange. But if you'd been behind the wheel that night, if you'd heard the whispers, the screams, if you'd seen the things I did, you'd understand why her name chills me to my core now. I thought it was just another delivery. Boxes, paper, electronics. But what I found in the back of that trailer, it still haunts me. And now, I can't shake the feeling that I brought something back with me. Something dark. something that watches, something that whispers. So if you're ready, if you're brave enough, then lean in close, turn up the volume, and prepare yourself. Because this is a story you'll never forget. I got the call on a Tuesday morning, early before the sun had fully crested over the horizon, casting long, eerie shadows across my kitchen floor. I barely had my first sip of coffee when my dispatcher's number flashed on my phone. "Got a special one for you," he said, his voice crackling through the line like static. "High-profile client, top dollar, they requested you specifically." I should have been suspicious right then. After all, why would a celebrity like Oprah, a woman with endless resources and connections, be reaching out to a lone trucker like me? But $15,000 for a single haul? That kind of money can make you ignore a lot of red flags. The pickup was in Miami, a city that always feels like it's holding its breath. Humid, sticky, and alive with secrets. I rolled up to the address they gave me, a nondescript warehouse on the edge of the industrial district. It looked abandoned, the kind of place you'd expect to find rats, not high-end cargo. When I pulled my rig into the loading bay, I was met by a group of men, silent, stone-faced, and dressed in black. They moved with military precision, their eyes constantly darting to the shadows as if expecting someone or something to lunge out at them. They didn't say a word as they loaded the trailer, and I didn't ask any questions. But when I caught a glimpse of the boxes, my pulse quickened. They weren't the usual crates or pallets I was used to. They were plain brown boxes, each sealed tight with clear tape, stacked from floor to ceiling like coffins in a crypt. As I sat in my cab, waiting for the go-ahead to pull out, one of the men approached my window. He leaned in close, his breath fogging the glass. "Drive straight to the address we gave you. No stops, no detours, and don't open the trailer." I forced a nod, trying to ignore the chill that ran down my spine. He gave me a look, the kind that strips you down to your soul, and slapped an envelope against my dashboard. "Half now, the rest when you finish the job." When he turned and walked back into the shadows of the warehouse, I tore open the envelope. Thick stacks of cash stared back at me, crisp, clean $100 bills. More money than I'd ever held at once. Enough to drown out the nagging voice in the back of my mind telling me something was very, very wrong. But as I pulled onto the highway, my rig groaning under the weight of the mysterious cargo, that chill in my bones only grew stronger. I tried to shake it off, telling myself it was just nerves, just another run. But deep down, I knew better. Because the deeper I drove into the darkness, the more I felt like I was being watched. I kept the radio off as I drove, the low hum of the engine my only companion. The highway stretched out like a black vein beneath my wheels, the landscape slipping by in a blur of headlights and shadow. I tried not to think about the boxes in the trailer, but it was impossible. My mind kept circling back to them, the way those men had moved around them, their cold, watchful eyes as they loaded them in. It didn't add up. About halfway through the trip, just outside of Baton Rouge, my phone lit up on the passenger seat. The number was blocked. I hesitated, my heart thudding in my chest, before finally answering. "Yeah?" I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Don't open the trailer?" the voice said. It wasn't the same man from before. This one was colder, more detached, like he was reading from a script. "No matter what you hear, no matter what you think you see, just keep driving." The line went dead before I could respond. The call cutting off with a sharp click that echoed through the cab like a gunshot. I tossed the phone back onto the seat, my hands tightening around the wheel. What the hell had I gotten myself into? For the next 100 miles, every bump in the road, every rattle from the trailer felt like a threat, a reminder of the unknown cargo I was hauling across the country. Then just past the Texas state line, it started. At first, it was just a faint, almost imperceptible sound. A soft, rhythmic tapping coming from the back of the trailer, like something shifting, struggling. I told myself it was just the boxes settling. Maybe one had come loose. But deep down, I knew that wasn't it. The tapping grew louder, more insistent. Then came the whispers. Faint, frantic, like dozens of voices overlapping in a frantic, desperate chorus. I tightened my grip on the wheel, my knuckles going white. I didn't dare look in the mirrors. I didn't want to see. But then, over the rush of the wind and the growl of the engine, I heard it. A scream. It was muffled, distant, but unmistakable. A raw, guttural wail that cut through the darkness like a blade. I felt my stomach twist, bile rising in my throat. I leaned forward, my eyes locked on the endless stretch of asphalt ahead, refusing to look back, refusing to acknowledge the horror just a few feet behind me. The screams grew louder, more frantic, like whatever was in those boxes had woken up and realized it was trapped. For a moment, I considered pulling over, throwing open the trailer doors and tearing through those boxes to see what I'd been paid to haul. But the memory of that voice on the phone, the threat in his tone, held me back. I forced myself to keep driving, my pulse pounding in my ears, the trailer shuddering behind me like a living thing. Then, as suddenly as it had started, the noise stopped. The screams cut off, the whispers faded, and the trailer fell silent once more, as if nothing had ever happened. But I knew better. I glanced in the mirror, half expecting to see the shadows of those boxes shifting, pressing against the walls of the trailer, but all I saw was darkness. I whispered a silent prayer, my breath fogging the inside of the cab, and pressed my foot down harder on the gas, desperate to put as much distance between myself and whatever was back there as possible. But deep down, I knew that I couldn't outrun it. Whatever I was hauling, it wasn't just cargo. It was something else, something alive, and it was waking up. I pushed through the night, my headlights cutting through the fog that had rolled in from the Gulf. The tapping from the trailer had stopped, but the silence felt heavier, like something was holding its breath, waiting for me to let my guard down. I kept glancing in my mirrors, half expecting to see something peeking back at me from the darkness. But the road behind me remained empty, my taillights casting long, flickering shadows that seemed to stretch and bend like twisted limbs. I tried to shake it off, telling myself it was just my nerves, the isolation playing tricks on my mind. But then my GPS flickered, the screen glitching out before resetting itself. The route had changed. I frowned, gripping the wheel tighter. The original route had me cutting across the desert, a straight shot into California. Now, the GPS wanted me to take a series of back roads, narrow, winding paths through dense, unlit forests. Damn it, I muttered, reaching for my phone to check the route, but the screen was dead, completely unresponsive. A cold sweat broke out on the back of my neck as I realized just how isolated I was. No cell signal, no radio reception, just me, my rig, and the dead, empty road. I took a deep breath, trying to calm my racing heart. Just a glitch, I told myself. Just a bad signal. But then the whispers started again. They were louder this time, echoing from the walls of the trailer, seeping into the cab like a cold draft. I felt my pulse quicken, my breath coming in short, shallow gasps. Then a voice cut through the static, clear, sharp, and right behind me. Help us! I slammed on the brakes, the rig lurching forward as my heart hammered against my ribs. My eyes shot to the side mirror, half expecting to see a face pressed against the trailer's thin metal walls. But there was nothing. Nothing but darkness. I forced myself to keep moving, my hands trembling as I shifted gears and eased the rig back onto the narrow, twisting road. The whispers grew louder, their voices overlapping, blending together into a chaotic, desperate chorus. Help us. Help us. Help us. I tried to drown it out, focusing on the road, my headlights carving through the mist that clung to the trees like ghostly fingers. Then, as I rounded a tight corner, I saw them. Figures standing by the side of the road, pale, emaciated, their eyes hollow and staring. They lined the shoulder, their heads turning in unison as my truck roared past, their mouths opening and closing like fish gasping for air. I clenched my jaw, refusing to look back. I could feel their eyes on me, their whispers echoing in my ears. Their faces burned into my mind like a brand. I forced myself to keep driving, the darkness pressing in from all sides, the trees looming overhead like skeletal hands reaching for my trailer. And then, just as suddenly as it had started, the road opened up, the forest falling away into a wide, empty desert. I glanced in my mirror one last time, my heart thudding in my chest. But the figures were gone. All that remained was my trailer, rattling behind me, its sides dented and scratched as if something inside had been trying to claw its way out. I swallowed, my throat dry, and forced my foot down on the gas, desperate to leave that cursed stretch of road behind. But deep down, I knew I wasn't alone. Whatever I was hauling, whatever I had agreed to deliver, it was still back there, and it was getting stronger. The desert stretched out around me, an ocean of cracked earth and skeletal brush bathed in the pale glow of my headlights. The air felt thicker out here, each breath dragging through my lungs like sandpaper. I checked my mirrors again, my eyes flicking over the darkened trailer. I half expected to see those pale figures clinging to the sides, their hollow eyes fixed on me. But there was nothing. Just the cold, lifeless metal swaying behind me. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. The whispers had stopped, but the air in the cab felt heavier, like the pressure had dropped, squeezing my chest with an invisible fist. I glanced at the GPS, hoping for some sign that I was getting close to my destination, but the screen had gone dark again, its faint greenish glow flickering like a dying pulse. My hands were slick with sweat, my pulse thundering in my ears. I gripped the wheel tighter, my fingers aching as I forced myself to keep my eyes on the road, ignoring the icy trickle of fear crawling up my spine. And then I heard it. Not a whisper, not a scream, but a deep, resonant thud. A sound so heavy it seemed to vibrate through the frame of the truck, rattling my teeth and making the windshield shiver. I flinched, my foot twitching on the gas pedal. I felt the trailer shudder behind me, the metal groaning as if under some immense unseen weight. Thud. It came again, louder this time, like a giant's fist slamming against the inside of the trailer doors. Thud. I glanced in the side mirror, my pulse spiking as I caught a glimpse of the trailer's thin metal walls bowing outward, the steel flexing like something was trying to push its way out. Thud. My breath hitched, panic clawing at my throat. I tightened my grip on the wheel, my knuckles white, the skin stretched tight over bone. Thud. I forced my eyes back to the road, the yellow lines blurring as the sound grew louder, more insistent. A slow, relentless pounding that seemed to echo in my chest, matching the frantic hammer of my heart. I wanted to pull over, to stop and throw open the trailer doors to see what the hell I was hauling. But I couldn't. The memory of that phone call, that cold, detached voice warning me to keep driving, held me in place. Thud. The sound didn't stop. It just kept coming. The vibrations rattling the cab, the mirrors shivering, the engine groaning under the strain. And then, just as suddenly as it had started, it stopped. Silence. I took a shaky breath, my pulse still racing, my hands trembling on the wheel. I tried to tell myself it was just the road, just the trailer settling. But deep down, I knew that was a lie. Something was back there. Something huge. Something angry. I pressed my foot down harder on the gas. The engine roaring as the rig surged forward. The speedometer climbing higher and higher. But no matter how fast I drove, I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever was in that trailer, whatever I had agreed to deliver, was getting closer. And it was hungry. The miles stretched on. The desert blurring into an endless, lifeless expanse of cracked earth and twisted brush. I felt like I was driving through a dream, or maybe a nightmare, where the road just keeps going and going, the horizon always just out of reach. Then the voices started again. At first it was just a whisper, so faint I thought it was the wind slipping through the cracked seams of the trailer door. But the longer I drove, the clearer it became. Words rising from the darkness behind me, thin and strange, like the last gasps of dying throats. She works it. I jolted, my eyes flicking to the rearview mirror. The trailer rattled and swayed, the metal walls creaking under some unseen pressure. All we do is work. The voices overlap, dozens of them. their tones twisted and warped. Male and female, young and old, blending together into a desperate broken chorus. She watches us. He watches us. They watch us perform. Their words twisted through the air, seeping into the cab like smoke, clinging to my skin, filling my lungs. I felt my pulse spike, my breath coming in shallow gasps as the whispers grew louder, more frantic. We can't stop. She won't let us stop. I gripped the wheel tighter, my fingers cramping, my knuckles white against the leather. I tried to drown them out, to focus on the road, but the voices wouldn't stop. They just kept coming, rising in pitch and intensity, like the wails of the dam. He watches us perform. I felt a cold shiver crawl up my spine. My heart pounding so hard I thought my ribs might crack. My eyes darted to the side mirror, half expecting to see something staring back at me. A face, a hand, something clawing its way out of the darkness. But there was nothing. Just my trailer, rocking and swaying, its sides dented and scratched, the metal bending inward like a ribcage about to collapse. She watches. She demands. She performs. The words twisted in my mind, snaking through my thoughts, weaving themselves into my heartbeat, my breath, my very pulse. I felt my grip on reality slipping, the road blurring around me, the darkness pressing in from all sides. We perform, we perform, we perform. The trailer shuddered, the metal screeching like nails on a chalkboard, the entire rig swaying as if something enormous was thrashing against the walls, trying to break free. I forced my foot down on the gas, the engine roaring as I hurtled down the highway, the speedometer needle trembling at the edge of the red. But the voices only grew louder, their words turning into screams, raw and frenzied, their pain and desperation bleeding into the night, echoing through the steel walls, cutting through my thoughts like a blade. I clenched my jaw, my teeth grinding, my mind fracturing under the weight of their terror. I felt my vision blur, the edges of my world turned dark, the road slipping away beneath my wheels as the voices closed in around me. And then, just as I felt myself slipping over the edge, the highway straightened out, the desert falling away into the bright, blinding lights of the city. Los Angeles. I didn't remember the last 100 miles. Didn't remember the hours that had slipped past in a blur of darkness and whispers. All I knew was that I had reached my destination, the mansion. I slammed on the brakes, the rig lurching forward as the trailer rattled and groaned, the metal flexing one last time before falling still. The voices cut off, the silence crashing down around me like a wave, suffocating and absolute. I sat there for a long moment, my heart racing, my breath coming in ragged, shuddering gasps, my mind struggling to claw its way back to reality. The mansion loomed ahead, its towering gates swinging open as I approached, the wrought iron teeth parting like the jaws of some ancient, slumbering beast. My rig groaned as it rolled over the gravel driveway, the headlights casting long, twisted shadows against the manicured hedges and sprawling lawns. A group of men stood waiting in the circle drive, their faces hidden in the deep shadows cast by the grand stone pillars lining the entrance. They moved as one as I came to a stop, their steps precise, their expressions blank, their eyes cold and unblinking as they surrounded the trailer. I killed the engine, my pulse thundering in my ears, my breath coming in shallow, uneven gasps. My hands shook as I unbuckled my seatbelt, the faint stench of sweat clinging to the cab, the echoes of those whispered pleas still ringing in my mind. As I climbed down from the truck, one of the men stepped forward, his face pale in the moonlight, his eyes dead and glassy, like a fish left too long on ice. He gave me a single swing and turned to the trailer, his fingers moving with mechanical precision as he worked the lock. The door swung open, the hinges creaking like the rusty gates of a forgotten ship. I stepped back, my heart pounding, my mind screaming at me to look away, to turn and run.
Imagine
but I
it's
couldn't.
50 minutes.
I was frozen, rooted to the spot. My eyes locked on the dark interior of the trailer as the men began unloading the crates. One by one, they lifted the boxes. Their movements
wish
soft
they'd
and
be
unnatural.
rich.
Their eyes never blinking.
They should have sold their
Their
damn
breaths
soul.
slow and steady, like they were moving in slow motion. But as I peered into the trailer, my mind racing, my pulse thundering in my ears, I realized something was wrong. The trailer was empty. My pulse skipped, my breath catching in my throat. The men moved past me, carrying the crates into the mansion, their footsteps echoing against the cold stone, their shadows stretching long and thin across the cracked pavement.
What the hell?
But inside the trailer, the space I knew had been filled from floor to ceiling with those sealed, heavy boxes. There was nothing. No crates. No boxes. Just darkness. I blinked, my vision swimming, my heart slamming against my ribs as I stepped closer, my boots crunching against the gravel. I leaned into the trailer, my eyes straining to adjust to the darkness, my breath coming in short, shallow gasps. And then I saw it. A small, pink stuffed animal, slumped against the cold metal floor, its fur matted and stained, one black button eye hanging by a thread. It lay there, alone, abandoned, the only trace of the cargo I had just delivered. The only proof that something had been back there. Something real. Something alive. I stumbled back.
Yeah, you probably would make
racing, my mind fracturing as I tried to make sense of what I was seeing. One of the men glanced back at me, his eyes narrowing as if he could sense my panic, his jaw tightening as he took in my wide-eyed stare. I forced myself to look away, to turn and stagger back to my cab, my breath coming in ragged, broken gasps as I fumbled with the door handle, my fingers trembling, my heart hammering in my chest. I clambered into the driver's seat, my hands shaking as I jammed the key into the ignition, my mind reeling, my pulse thundering in my ears. As the engine roared to life, I cast one last glance back at the mansion, my eyes drawn to the towering stone steps, the darkened windows, the cold, lifeless facade. And that's when I saw her. Oprah, standing in the doorway, her figure framed by the flickering light from within, her eyes locked on mine. She didn't move. She didn't blink. She just watched as I pulled away, her shadow stretching long and thin across the stone steps, her expression unreadable, her gaze unblinking, her presence as cold and unyielding as the darkness that clouded the walls around her.
So we could hold
my eyes away. My heart slamming against my ribs as I hit the gas. The rig lurching forward, the gravel spitting out behind me as I sped down the driveway. The mansion growing smaller and smaller in my rearview mirror, its shadow clinging to me like a curse. As I roared through the gates and back onto the highway, my breath came in short, frantic gasps, my pulse thundering in my ears, the faint stench of sweat and fear still clinging to the air around me. But no matter how fast I drove, no matter how far I fled, I couldn't shake the feeling that her eyes were still on me, watching, waiting, calculating. A predator lurking in the darkness biding its time. And as the mansion disappeared into the rear view, the last thing I saw before the darkness swamped. They say mirrors never lie, but what if they're rehearsing?
Mr. Shout-Out is yeah, he's gay for sequel. Why else would he be kissing that man's ass?
What I found beneath it wasn't just hidden, it was practice. Mirror rooms,
not that there's anything wrong with being gay.
And a voice that speaks in symbols.
He kisses that nigga
callous,
like it's
harder.
Like it's
this isn't a memory, it's a pattern. And if you've ever remembered something that didn't happen, you may have already heard the tempo. Her name is Oprah, and she's been practicing in plain sight. They didn't give me much. Just a laminated badge with a one-time clearance code and an address scrawled onto a shipping label like it had been peeled off something else. The voice on the phone, calm, quick, not quite official, said I was being contracted for a private compliance assessment. No agency name, no scope details, only a warning, report structural anomalies. Do not document contents. No photos, no digital notes. I specialize in code compliance, mostly foundation audits and fire risk assessments, industrial spaces, public buildings, not estates, not like this. When I pulled up the long, winding road, my headlights cut across a wall of hedges that looked grown from a blueprint. Not a leaf out of place. The gate was already open, swinging inward like it had been waiting. The house beyond was massive but subdued. more institutional than residential. Pale walls, high glass, a silence that pressed down harder the closer I got. A man in a charcoal coat stood waiting beneath the archway. He didn't ask for my name, just checked the badge, nodded once and said, "East Wing only, don't drift, no recordings." I didn't even get to ask who lived here. Inside, the air was colder than expected and dry, like it had been filtered too many times. Every footstep echoed. There were no personal items, no art, no signs of habitation. Just silence and an architectural sterility that made my skin crawl. He led me down a corridor lined with closed doors. Every few feet, a discreet black lens blinked overhead. Eventually, we stopped outside a tall, unmarked set of double doors. "Library wing," he said. "Focus on foundation walls. Eastern corner. If you encounter sealed sections, leave them." And then he left. The doors creaked open on hydraulics, revealing not a library so much as a showroom of one. Floor-to-ceiling shelves, untouched volumes, a spiral staircase curling upward like a sculpture. Everything was immaculate but wrong. Too perfect. No dust, no signs of use. Even the leather-bound books looked curated more than read. I took out my light and started the usual checks. Baseboards, corners, wall seams. No signs of shifting or moisture, just immaculate drywall and sealed joints, until I reached the far eastern corner. One shelf stood slightly ajar, not visibly, but enough that a breeze tugged at the paper in my hand. I pressed my palm against it. Cold air, drafting from behind. There was no latch, no handle, until I crouched and found a recessed ridge beneath the bottom shelf. It gave with a soft mechanical whine. Behind it, a narrow passage stretched away in the darkness. Dry air flowed through it like breath escaping a mouth too long sealed. I paused, radioed in. Static. Dead channel. And yet, I stepped inside. I shouldn't have. Every part of me knew that. But I told myself it was just a tunnel. Just concrete and air. The walls were narrow, unpainted, and old. Poured cement. Probably original to the estate subfloor. Maybe an old servant corridor or maintenance shaft. That's what I told myself. At the far end, a reinforced metal door stood sealed with a numbered keypad. The screen was cracked, but the latch slid with a sound like teeth grinding together. The room beyond was colder. Dim fluorescent lights buzzed to life as I entered. At first I thought I found a storage basement, but then I saw the mirrors. Not one or two. An entire wall, lined from floor to ceiling in uneven, mismatched mirrors. Some cracked, some fogged, some flawless. Across from them were rows of desks, like an old classroom. On the front wall, a blackboard split down the middle. A dead spotlight above the podium flickered on, then steadied, without a sound. I stood there frozen. The mirrors showed monkeys! Distorted, elongated, delayed by a half second, like I was being watched, not in real time, but from memory. The air shifted. It was quiet, but too quiet. The kind that makes your ears strain to hear what isn't there.
Why am I always needing more
I noticed
ammo?
the outlines. Chalk shapes on the mirrors. Not graffiti. Silhouettes. Children, maybe. Head and shoulders traced on the glass like someone had drawn them in place of their reflections. I took a step back. That's when I heard it. Not footsteps. Not
Why
feet.
can I see so clearly now?
Fabric. Shifting against stone. Behind the podium. I whispered, "Someone there." No answer. Just a low creak from the far end of the room, like a chair being pulled back. I didn't wait to find out. I backed away, then ran. By the time I made it back to the tunnel, the panel door had closed behind me. Locked again. Like it had never opened. The man in the
If
dark
that's all you
coat was
got,
waiting.
maybe I'm not
Any
drinking
whiskey?
enough.
Yeah, washing my face. I swallowed. Nothing to report. He nodded. Then you're cleared. I left. But that night I couldn't sleep.
Getting low on
I kept seeing that
ammunition.
room, that mirror, that spotlight. So I wrote a note and hid it in my glove box. It said, not a basement, not a classroom, something older. And the mirrors don't just reflect.
Nothing but you.
I didn't expect anyone to follow up. Jobs like that usually disappear behind locked folders and non-disclosure lines so tight they may as well be players. But 3 days later, I got a knock on my door at 6:12 a.m. Not a call. A knock. The man waiting outside didn't show a badge. He wore a Navy windbreaker with a patch I didn't recognize. He didn't ask if I had time to talk. He said, "You found something we need to trace. We're sending you to someone who can help you understand it." He handed me a manila envelope and turned before I could respond. Inside was a burner phone, a prepaid card, and a single photo. A still image from a surveillance feed. It was the room I had seen, but from a different angle. The chalkboard was clean now, but the mirrors. Someone had etched a spiral across the center pane. A red spiral, drawn with shaky lines. Beneath it were 2 words. Cycle 5. Something tightened in my chest. That phrase, it wasn't in any architectural code book or audit checklist. But it was familiar, like a word I'd seen in a dream, but wasn't mine. The phone buzzed once. A message. "She'll meet you at the diner on Highway 14. Noon. Don't be late." Her name wasn't given. She wore dark glasses and a coat too heavy for the weather. We didn't shake hands, just sat across from each other in a booth where the blinds were drawn, and the waitress didn't even glance our way. She placed a flash drive on the table and said, "What you saw wasn't part of the estate's structural blueprint. It was part of something older, an initiative."
It's no
"What
record.
kind of initiative?" I asked. She didn't answer right away. Then, "The kind that rehearses memory until it stops resisting." I opened my mouth, but she cut me off.
The spirits come
You've seen
to
the cycle
aid
phrase
us.
before. Cycle 1 through 4 appeared in files overseas. Johannesburg, Geneva, once in Cairo, but Cycle 5, that's only been attached to one location, the place you entered. She opened a folder. Inside were printouts of sketches, childlike, crude. Each one showed a girl in front of a mirror. Sometimes she was smiling,
Grand
sometimes
secret.
crying, but always the same spiral somewhere in the frame, drawn in the pupil, in a handprint, floating in the corner like a shadow. "We thought they were symbolic," he said. "Coping patterns, maybe." Until one of our analysts traced a series of confiscated tapes labeled Playback 5. They weren't therapy sessions. They were performances. I stared at the images, at the spiral burned into every page. "What does it mean?" "It's a loop," he said. "Not a symbol. A command. You enter, you rehearse, you forget. Then you rehearse to forget." Later that night, I plugged the flash drive into a secure terminal. No Wi-Fi. No external ports. Just playback. The first file was grainy video. A girl, maybe 10, sits in a mirrored room, whispering something I couldn't hear. Her lips moved in a steady rhythm. Her hands tapped her chest 3 times. Then she smiled and said, "I remember it differently now. Thank you." The file ended. The second video was worse. A different girl, older. She looked directly into the camera, eyes too wide, too still. "I was removed so others could remain," he said. "I was the rehearsal." Her reflection moved before she did. I shut the drive and walked outside. I needed air, but the night didn't feel real. The wind had no scent. My own shadow looked delayed, as if I was watching myself from behind glass. I opened my glove box again, pulled out the original note. I added 4 more words. Cycle 5 is alive. The next morning, I received a parcel at my doorstep. No return address. Inside was a sealed folder marked with a sticker I hadn't seen before. An hourglass with no sand. Beneath it, a file labeled Memory Compliance Initiative. Site R, Retention. Confidential. Classification, Spiral Dorm. The folder contained architectural blueprints, subterranean schematics, a room labeled Echo Chamber 4B with a note beside it. Playback integrity pending. Do not disrupt. In the margins, scrawled in handwriting that didn't match anything else. They rehearse gratitude until it replaces memory. That's how they stay quiet. That's when I realized this wasn't about missing children. It was about remembered roles, and someone was keeping score. They told me to stop. Not explicitly, but the message was clear. The burner phone they gave me buzzed once more. A new number. The text said, "Deliver the folder. Do not open anything further." I didn't respond. Instead, I called someone I hadn't spoken to in 4 months. Years. He used to be in digital forensics. Left after an overseas case that gave her seizures every time a certain pitch rang above 3 QRs. She called it audio contamination. I called it PTSD. We both agreed not to talk about it, but now I needed it. We met at a self-storage lot outside the city. No cameras, no forms, just a key passed over coffee. "You're looking into something you shouldn't be," he said, flipping through the flash drive's contents. "And it's not just buried, it's rehearsed out of existence." She paused on a folder labeled Echo Audio, Tier 3. "Have you played any of these out loud?" she asked. I shook my head. "Just visual review." Her lips tightened. "Don't. Not unless you're grounded. These aren't just videos, they're audio-locked rehearsals. Subharmonic loops meant to recondition response states." "Condition how?" I asked. She turned her laptop toward me. A waveform played on screen. No dialogue, just soft pulses, like a heartbeat. One every 3.6 seconds. "I ran it through my distortion scanner," she said. "There's a pattern buried under the base layer. It's not music. It's rhythmic alignment, meant to alter cognition. Play it long enough, and it bypasses language. Your body starts repeating what it hears, even if you don't understand it." "You're saying it programs people?" He didn't answer. Just tapped the keyboard and pulled up a frame from one of the videos. A girl, age uncertain, sits in front of a cracked mirror. She's not speaking, just mouthing. Then I noticed. My own fingers had started tapping. 3 beats, 1 pause, over and over. I forced myself to stop. That night, I dreamt of mirrors. Not nightmares, dreams of familiarity. As if I had seen those walls before, sat in those desks, smiled on cue, even woke with the words already in my head. I remember it differently now. Thank you. The next morning, I returned to the estate. Not officially, not with clearance. I used a utility badge and a fake service call ticket. Told the guard I was following up on a circuit anomaly. He didn't ask questions. Just moved me through. The east wing was locked, so I entered through a lower access panel in the maintenance hall. From there, I found a corridor. Narrow, dry, humming faintly. But this time I didn't take the same path. I remembered the blueprints, the folder with the spiral dorm. There had been a second access point, 1 level deeper, marked Room 4B. No external latch, just a wall panel with a magnetic seal. I used the tool hidden in my boot heel, a field key from an old job. It clicked open like it had been waiting. The stairwell beyond was unlike the other tunnels. The walls here were curved, polished, no visible seams. And the air, it pulsed. Not metaphorically, literally. A low vibration that ran just beneath the skin. I followed the curve for what felt like 20 minutes, until the hallway opened into a circular chamber. At the center was a pedestal. On it, a metronome. Still ticking. The walls were mirrors again, but these weren't cracked or faded. They shimmered with a glaze that bent light too perfectly. Every movement I made echoed 6 or 7 reflections deep, but not all of them matched. One reflection was wrong. She smiled when I didn't. I stepped back. A voice, young, clear, echoed from nowhere. Rehearsal pending, awaiting playback initiation. I turned toward the sound, but the room was empty. The metronome ticked faster. I saw the spiral again, this time etched into the center of the pedestal. Beneath it, echo room compliance level, tempo tier. My vision blurred, my hands trembled. I left, fast. I don't remember running, only being outside, back in my car, drenched in sweat. The sun had shifted overhead, but the clock on my dash hadn't moved. I pulled over 5 miles down and wrote everything down in the backup journal, penciled it by hand. Then I added one more line. Playback isn't memory, it's direction. The mirror teaches you how to remember wrong until it feels right. After I left that mirrored chamber, I tried to forget. I really did. I shut down my backup terminal. I disabled the burner phone. I tossed the flash drive into a sealed lockbox and left it in a friend's storage unit under a fake name. But forgetting isn't the same as leaving something behind. The images stayed. The ticking metronome, the reflections that smiled out of sync. The phrase etched into the pedestal. Echo room, tempo tier. It looped in my mind like a half-heard jingle you can't shake. So I drove. Not back to the estate. Somewhere else. There had been a reference in the original schematic to an auxiliary shaft, listed as an early foundation chamber. It wasn't connected to the estate directly. Coordinates placed it about 2 miles out, near a forgotten switchyard built into the hill decades before the mansion existed. Publicly condemned, privately committed. It was the only place left they hadn't sealed up. The access hatch was buried in the rusted ventilation shed behind the old tracks. I had to cut through brush and pry open a latch that had been painted shut years ago. The padlock, though, new, polished, recently oiled. That told me enough. I climbed down into stale dark. The air was wrong from the first step, thick and unmoving, like I was sinking beneath fabric instead of descending into stone. The concrete walls narrowed as I walked, pulling in tighter every 100 feet, lightless, sealed. Just enough space to pass through single file, and every 20 feet I saw the same thing. Hooks. Not coat hooks. Not rails. Ceiling-mounted metal brackets. Empty, but spaced like they once held lighting rigs or mounted